Welcome to the podcast. Today she's been to TEDx as a speaker. She is the solo founder of Timeline VC, and her career path is pretty unique, being in the startup world, the VC world, consulting, private equity, basically everything that you can actually think of. And she's now blending all of this together into VC and entrepreneurship. So welcome to the podcast, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, looking back, right, when you connect the dots, maybe even all the way back to your childhood, what life experiences and career roles have made you become a Timeline VC?
Absolutely. So, growing up, I spent a lot of time in the ocean and so in tidal pools. And so, being from New England and around the Boston area, I spent a lot of time really in those types of ecosystems. So, those are the first ones that I could spend hours at the beach, like overturning rocks and then seeing what's inside. And that's actually I would say, very similar to a job in venture capital because you're spending a lot of time in different ecosystems. You're getting out there, you're learning. And some days you're going to see deals that are aligned to what you are looking for. And other days it's just you're going out there to meet people. And so when I was in the tidal pools, I saw everything from lobsters, octopuses, crabs, you name it. Basically, SpongeBob, you'll think of. I've seen all those critters. And so it was basically a treasure hunt, and that can get applied to venture capital overall. But career wise, the role that set up the rest of my career happened in high school. So I was 16, and a high school teacher at the time came to me and she said Harvard was piloting a new entrepreneurship program. It was going to be run by Harvard students and their alumni. And so I applied and I was part of their pilot program. This was in 2015. That one program allowed me to meet my first venture capitalist. So I learned that VC is not just Shark Tank, that people do this for their day job, which I thought was so cool. I also got on stage and pitched a company for the very first time. And then I built my own resume for the first time as well. And then from that program, I ended up working at a startup that was based out of the Harvard Innovation Lab. It was run by two students at the time. And so we were in the e-commerce space. And essentially, what we were building there was Facebook Marketplace, but a year before actually Facebook Marketplace became feature that it is today. And so I have many memories running across campus. We did a guerrilla marketing campaign with the Harvard freshman dorms, which is all of Harvard Yard. So the dorms surrounding that is all freshmen. So we were like wrapping these like yard sale gifts and like playing ding dong ditch on the doors, knocking, and then the person would open, they would get like a gift that was branded with that company. So it was a lot of fun. And that really is what got me into entrepreneurship. When a year later happened, Facebook Marketplace ended up launching. And so our business model got completely turned and pivoted to a Brazil market. And then I think it operated in Brazil for an additional year. But the Facebook Marketplace, they had 1 billion users back in 2016 on Facebook overall. So being a competitor in that space is very different. So we had to pivot. And then also going to more of my adult careers, working on a fund of fund on the institutional side really allowed me to see venture capital from a more economist perspective. So I feel like that role was a mix of being an FBI agent and economist for just VCs. And so that was very rare moment that I get to work with emerging managers and then the household names that everyone knows.
How about your university years?
Of course. So in university, I was educated in Rhode Island. And so I spent a lot of the time, we didn't have a VC specific group. So I spent a lot of time with the founders and entrepreneurs and then ended up being part of Bryant Ventures, which was a student led accelerator at the time, which I ended up leading for my senior year. But I spent a lot of time with those that were building the next generation companies. And what really made that group successful was having the support of our school and then also alumni. So having alumni come in that have built companies and really was able to kind of break down the process for students and make it less scary per se was really incredible. And so that was, I believe when I did lead the group, about $750,000 was closed for the students that were in the program. our school organization, and most of that came from angels and alumni. So that was really the year that we really ran home with, okay, what would VCs look like, or what kind of metrics are they looking at? And then taking those types of decks and bringing it to angels. And I was a scout and fellow through my college years as well. So that also helped in the ecosystem.
It seems like you really do have like every single perspective of what a VC should be, the accelerator side, the institutional fund side. So tell us, like who is VC not for?
Absolutely. Well, I would just like to say I'm always learning. So I am by no means an expert. And I would say I'm overall a generalist, but I really enjoy working with specialists. So that's how I kind of put it. I would say for number one, if you do not like sales, do not go into venture capital. It is actually like a really unsexy position. And I don't know if people know like the day to day aspect of it, especially at early stage. So early stage is different than late stage. All my experience is on early stage. So it's basically hitting the ground running, building up the fund's brands, and so the sales aspect of the role is cold emailing, negotiating. You're really marketing yourself to founders, but then also you're marketing yourself to your fund's investors as well. And negotiating, you're going to have to do that with founders because it's a very competitive space. So there might be another VC fund that's looking at the same deal. So you're now in the seat of like, it could be us or them. How are you going to navigate that? If you also dislike networking, do not enter this space. VCs run to events all the time, both GPs and then also the junior staff. Like that is the number one advice. If you break in a venture, it's like start your network. So if events aren't your things, there are other ways to get involved in the ecosystem, but being a VC analyst or associate is not one of them. Also, if you're looking for a career path that's very straight, or if you believe if I do X, then X is going to happen, do not enter this space either. It is a windy road, I will say. And so it either excites you or bores you, but if you are on the exciting path, then fully go for it.
Yeah. And those are some of the major characteristics that honestly like cycles out like most people. But then if that actually sounds like you, as the aspiring VC listening to this, right? Then literally go for it. This is an unconventional journey and you never know when an opportunity might pop up. So I guess like really talk about like your day to day now, right? Like you mentioned you are going to events. I know this is Boston Tech Week, but choose a day from last week and then tell us what 8 a.m., 9 a.m. looks like and also your morning routines, rituals, all of that.
Absolutely. So in the morning, I do start on either email or LinkedIn. So I'm in a really unique part of the market right now where I'm spending a lot of my time trying to find emerging VC funds, specifically in the New England area, that have launched in 2025 and 2026. So I spend a lot of my time kind of networking and going to events in the evening so that I book a lot of coffee chats throughout the day. So most of my work is on that. I do leave a couple hours midday to work on any technical aspects that I have to work on for my website or some of the products. So I'm not technical at all. I tried vibe coding, but I actually really prefer no code platforms, so softer. It's and actually a company based in the EU, but I love their platform. So that's the one that I use. And they handle all the security measures and all the fun stuff that goes with the nitty gritty parts of my website. So I'm doing some technical work on that and I run it by myself. So I'll do that in the afternoons. But yeah, in the evenings, you will find me all throughout Boston or at some type of event networking and just meeting new people.
So let's talk about Boston, right? Boston has such a unique ecosystem, but if you have not been to like at least a couple events, you would not know like what that entire ecosystem is. So tell us like what are the accelerators around here? What are the major events groups around here? Where do you find the best quality events as an aspiring VC?
Absolutely. So your first stop should always be Luma or Partiful. These are event platforms that if you are looking for anything that's startup related, go to them first. That will get you in the door to some events or understanding what the ecosystem is about. Right now in Massachusetts, there's a big push for the AI coalition. So follow all of their content online. They'll do a lot of startup events throughout almost, I want to say, weekly events or bi-weekly events. So that's a really good place, and they bring a lot of crowds to those. Some accelerators are CIC is a big one, the Cambridge Innovation Center. So get involved with those types of ecosystems. And then Y Combinator was actually a Boston-based company originally. They're now in SF, but you can actually see their old like HQ in Cambridge, funny enough. But those are just some of the areas that I would start with. There's a lot of smaller communities that are popping up based on interest. So over time, as you develop your thesis, you'll learn about those different types of groups.
And since, this week is Boston Tech Week, could
Yeah.
you just tell us, like, go to your calendar and just tell us what events you're going to?
My gosh. So I do know today, I'm doing the revolutionary like walking tour. I don't know if you've seen that one, but that's put on by Silicon Valley Bank. And then also later that day, there is also one by SVB as well at the F1 Arcade. So those are the two that are on my list. And then Dark Side AI Stories Night. That's another one that I'm going to tonight. I find that one really interesting. Tomorrow, I'm actually supporting a keynote speaker, so half of that day will be dedicated for the small business event there. Later that night, I'll be at it's Toyota Ventures has a robotics like happy hour. I actually used to intern at Toyota Research Institute, so really excited. Toyota Ventures is based in California, but Cambridge has their robotics lab, so really excited to see that team again. Thursday. Let's see what we have going on Thursday. Wait, we're doing Match House. So I will see you there. And yes, there are a couple other ones on my list as well, but those are just like a couple that I'll be at.
Yeah, I mean, Boston Tech Week, insanely packed. And I don't know, maybe I will also travel to like New York Tech Week, which is like the week after. Let's talk about it, right? For aspiring VCs, right? When you go to these events, what on earth do you do? Like, can you just give them a small guide on how to approach people, how to find VCs, and all that type of stuff to break into that ecosystem?
Absolutely. So I actually have a rule now that I don't ask people what they do when I first meet them, which is maybe now that I'm like a little bit more into my career, that's why I adopted it. But I get into like these like niche conversations and I find out like the person's like passion like pretty quickly through that. And then I ask them like secondary, usually throughout that conversation, it comes up what people do and why they're there. But if you're just starting, I would also have like the curious mindset and also note that what you might think of what a VC looks like isn't actually what they look like. So you might actually be talking to a VC and not know it. So just keep an open mind. I would say go in with topics that you're curious about. So if you know here in Boston, if healthcare is your thing or robotics is your thing, like come to the event with some relevant industry information that really excites you so that you're able to have those conversations from a little bit deeper level and that you're not coming in first time, but honestly just being friendly, just saying like, hey, what are you doing here at this event? If you want an intro like that.
And, as someone who's probably does this naturally, how do you stay in touch with the people in the events?
Absolutely. So after I typically have like coffee chats with them over the years, I also make sure to like continue to keep up with them. LinkedIn makes it really easy to engage with people's content. I think that is so underutilized in venture, especially now emerging VCs post everything online. One fund will even post their DPI, which I've only seen one fund do it, so I don't recommend anyone else do that. But if you really think that that's something you want the world to know, put it out there. But yeah, you on LinkedIn, you just get reminded year over year of different milestones or you read their content. So it's always top of mind in your network. So right now is actually the easiest time to get plugged in and also keep being plugged in.
Does that mean that aspiring VCs should ask for the LinkedIn instead of the contact methods like messaging or Instagram? Like, what is the messaging method? that people prefer the most?
That's a good question. I think it's also generational or what the VC is using online. So I can tell you some of the Gen Z VCs, they're on TikTok. They're posting every single day content on that platform. If you were to talk about them, I would say literally go to their TikTok account and just comment, and that's the best way to reach them. And they'll then reach out separately. Some people prefer text messages, and others it's email. And so I think LinkedIn is like a good starting platform. But if you see that they're on like Instagram or more active on these different platforms, Twitter or now X, that's another way that previously people have reached out. I still think that that's a good platform to know, especially for venture capital. But there are also other platforms now that are into play. So you can reach out to them in different ways. And I always go the social media route on top of like cold email. It's just because they get so much inbound. If you really interact with their content on LinkedIn, they're going to see it. Like if you're one of their 5, 10 comments, they're going to see it immediately.
Yeah, 100%. And, especially maybe they won't see it in the first, second, or third post if they have a large following. But if you are pretty consistent and maybe like set a timer, right? Like for when they usually post and you're always like the first person, then they would literally know and they would see that. So, on the other side, right? At these events, you're also meeting founders. So talk to me about like what is your investment thesis when investing in founders? What are the top three things?
Absolutely. So from founders, it kind of goes into my previous background when I was a fellow and sourcing. And so on top of the funds that or angels that I was working for, they typically had a thesis that they would have me hunt for. But I would say generally overall, I mean, this is totally my thoughts here. Number 1 is team, like really team over product. I've seen it many, many times and also market. Like you really need to make sure the team is right. Secondly, is the longevity of the problem that they're solving. Is this something that can get sustain different time periods or like the next decade? Or is some AI tool going to come and just like sweep it out next week? And then third has always been location as well. So I'm biased towards New England, but I typically worked outside of SF in New York. And so purposely, the investors and angels that I was working with were looking outside those regions and having me scrape deals in, let's say, like Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont was one area too, and really getting scrappy in those regions. So that was always something that I'd filter for.
And could you talk about maybe one or two stories of your most successful investment so far? How did you meet the founders and how did you know that they were the one?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. Especially on the early stage side, I would say rather than how did you know you're the one, you kind of have to have the mindset is, will this person win? So that's a little bit different because I was working with other people. The two case studies that I have, I'm not like financially, and I just want to make that known. But I did get to them early. Have you heard of Utopia Labs before?
I think I've
Uh,
heard of it. Tell
so
tell the audience
they
like what it is. That's all.
Okay. So they're a stablecoin company. I had met the founder because we were both fellows together in at New Stack Ventures. And then after the fellowship ended, he went to start, or one of the founders went to start a different company. And then he pivoted to this company. And so they're a stable coin that got launched. And then in 2024, November, they got bought by Coinbase. So they had a really incredible exit as a team, but that showed like founders over time have different iterations of their work. There was also a healthcare company based in Rhode Island. I met them in 2019. That was just a network warm intro. We did not invest. The angel group that I was working for did not invest in them, but they were dealing with the aging population, and they went on to close 15 million from other investors. And that was a company launched from Brown University students as well. So there were a lot of these little different stories of sourcing in New England that over time, I was looking at college students and investors were either really excited or like they're too early. And so that was kind of the company sourcing. And then the fund of fund sourcing, you won't actually know how the managers do until 10 years from now. So that's a very different structure of like what success looks like. But a lot of people count it as okay, did they make it to their next fund and were they oversubscribed? Those are two metrics that people have looked at in terms of tracking.
And talk more about that as well for the aspiring VCs going to be fund of funds. Like, what on earth is a fund of funds?
Absolutely. That's a good question because that part excites me the most. And I feel like going into venture, I didn't even know existed. So I landed on the fund of funds side by coincidence. I was shooting to work at a direct VC and ended up on the LP side for one of the funds that I was looking to work at. So it was very different for me. But essentially, the way that I look at VCs is they're founders themselves. So the VCs, they contribute some of their own money in their fund, but most of their fund actually comes from external, we call them limited partners, so LPs. So they have to go out to endowments, institutions, wealthy individuals, and raise capital. And so fund of funds is that LP layer where, and if you're running a fund of fund, you would essentially go to these different institutions, grab money, and so that VCs can go directly to you to get that pool of capital. So it's basically diversifies your portfolio. If you want to be in venture capital, but maybe direct deals isn't your forte, then this is a vehicle that will allow you to get into direct deals, but it's a different part of the market.
And talk more about like what types of VC funds they specifically invest in. Is it really, really metrics based? Is it really just based on their DPI? Or is it more based on the team?
So it depends on what type of investor is investing in the fund of fund. If you go run to an institutional investor today, they're going to ask you DPI. That's going to be the number one question. If you are building a fund one and maybe you're in your family and friends rounds or wealthy individuals, they're going to ask more about what your mission is, who you are as a person, and start dialogue that way. And so institutions, they do have that ability to know you as a person. And so maybe this is how I was trained also is get to know them as a person. These are very long, year-long relationships. It's not something that happens on day one. So you really have to vet them out. Track records are involved. The more institutional you get, the more financial quantitative it gets. And then at your early years, when you're building your track record, so say you're fund one and you don't have institutional investors, you really just wrap up what you previously done in your basically your whole resume and why you're going to get to a deal first. Those are the questions. So you're really selling your dreams in fund one. And by fund three and four, you'll hopefully have like a track record that you can go in and go to an institutional investor.
And I'm curious for the time when you were working at the institutional fund of funds, for the aspiring VCs who wants to start a fund, right? And this would be their fund one. Like, do you guys or did you guys invest in fund ones or is it strictly like fund twos or fund threes beyond?
So I was fortunate to have the ability, some of our investment pools did allow fund ones. So being able to build a fund one from the ground up, institutional investors also, if you're a fund one and you came from one of the big funds, and so you're considered a spin out, so that's also a strategy that institutional investors are comfortable running because you have a track record at a different fund that follows you. So those are kind of the two areas. But starting fund ones, and I've seen a lot more of that. People have it's hard to break into venture. And I've seen a lot of people actually late 20s and early 30s, rather than going and interview for a fund, they're actually building their own fund and they're solo GPs now. And so that's a different part of the market that I'm really excited that we're seeing more of.
Yeah. And talk about Timeline VC. What should the audience hear and know about it?
Absolutely. So I'm in my early days, but what I can say is that I'm really excited about helping emerging VC funds really grow. I have institutional knowledge, so really bringing that to the fund ones really excites me, but I can talk about one of the initiatives under it, which is the Startup Encyclopedia, which is what I'm building now. It's an open source library for emerging VC research. So I'm spending the summer collecting research for that and in a way to kind of give back and allow more people to have access to VC research.
And what was the journey of creating this startup encyclopedia? Was it just like piecing together all the materials from your Google Docs like years back? Because you have been in this ecosystem for a long time. So you know stuff that people don't know. And you are sharing it to the next generation. So how on earth do you piece everything together?
Absolutely. So the idea kind of came for I noticed with emerging VC funds, I've learned so much from emerging VCs in the market, being on the LP side, but then also if you follow them on LinkedIn, they are very open with their own research and put it out there. Like so for example, like behind Genius is fund based in California. The fund manager, she wrote an incredible piece on like venture capital and secondaries and like broke down every section of like what you should be thinking about within VC secondaries. Pre to emerging VCs writing freely online. That's something that like PitchBook would only have access to, or like they'll have like a secondaries report. So I'm basically building a platform that is not behind a paywall. And I've spent a lot of time in PitchBook. I love some of their reports, but only a few people have access to it because it's a $20,000 license fee. And so emerging VCs are one that their data doesn't get on that platform. So their really options are to independently publish on LinkedIn. Before they used Medium, so you can still find some Medium. Now it's like Substack, but you might find some of their information on Crunchbase, but it's not complete. So having something that like VCs can control, like the reports that they send out and the information that's known on this platform is one thing that really energizes me. Data is on top of mind for everyone these days. And it's not about having data, it's about quality data. And then it's like the next step of, okay, how do you filter through it? Or like what patterns are applicable, which ones aren't. And so really building a research library so that people can learn about like niche topics. So I use an example of even if you're a public school teacher teaching about like some type of science, maybe you find a report from like a scientific VC on something that they notice in the market. And then this public school teacher can bring it in and be like, oh, this is what's happening in the VC space, or this is some new technology that they can add into their curriculum.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, right? Even for aspiring VCs, it's really, really good to learn about the way that these emerging VCs actually think, because these are the trends that are actually getting funded by LPs, right? So if an aspiring VC can understand their thought process and methodology, then they can really add on to even like talks with people or interviews with other VC firms. So yeah, this is such an exciting project. And I am so glad to just see this entire journey of startup encyclopedia. So talk about, I guess, like, for the student side, right? I know you mentioned a little bit about Bryant Ventures and the Archway Investment Fund. So talk about like when you were in university, what was really the best way to break into the startup ecosystem?
Absolutely. So this was before AI. So it was really a manual process. One way I also like sourced in New England. So these were outside of like the Bay Area in New York City. So I had to get super scrappy on how I was meeting different founders and how I was meeting early. So I'd actually reached out to a lot of journalists in the different New England states who covered venture and startup ecosystems. Most of it was more of founders. And so that's how I get kind of my pipeline of companies was actually just reaching out to a lot of people who covered the space. And so having a touch point with journalists, but then also back then I used Crunchbase. We used any scrappiness that you can kind of encounter online. We've tried it. But then also going to physical events too was another way. And then when you are a college student, I really say like use your student ID as if it's like an Amex like premium card. Like really say you're a student, and a lot of people are able to speak with you and they're open to sharing their knowledge because you are a student. And even one of my thesis that I did for senior year was on VC hiring practices. So I reached out to VCs to kind of learn their perspective on that. And so I was able to talk to US and international VCs through that as well.
Okay, now we got to talk about that,
Yeah.
right? So for students, right? You've got your student email as your greatest asset when
Mm,
talking to alumni. What does that message actually look like? What should the subject be? For what should the description be? The summary, the paragraph inside this email. What should an example email be to a VC?
absolutely. So before you even write the email, understand what interests you. And then ideally, you'd find a VC online that touches the area that you're interested. So I can give an example. If you know that supply chain is your industry that really excites you, you can talk about like, hi, insert their name. Like, I'm a student. I'm really excited about like this space. I saw online that you invested in whatever space and that your recent investment is this company. I would really love to learn more about like how you built your fund or your investment strategy. You can also, going back to the supply chain example, you can even put in like, hey, there's at my university, there's these students that are building in the supply chain space, like just wanted to send it your way. And so you're kind of giving them deal flow before you even meet them. That's another good way.
That is the best way. Like literally for every single type of interview, right? If you're not bringing startups to the VC, I mean, honestly, like the other value that you have is bringing in capital. So it's either bringing in founders or bringing in capital, and it's just one or the two that you should be a master at, right? So in terms of, let's say, you've got that interview. Now we're talking about your senior project. What was the results from that project?
I did find out it was more this was published in 2021. Yeah, so I ran it from 2020 to 2021. And the theme of like VC hiring was top of mind at that time, especially as we entered COVID because everything we kind of came online. But the headliner was that people were still hiring people in their network. So they didn't really publish their JDs publicly. And so the two reasons that a spot opened up for emerging VCs or VCs in general were if someone on the team left or if they raised a new fund. And so their hiring practices happened only a very few times, especially at smaller funds. Like they don't have a hiring team, like the GPs really were the ones leading the charge on that. And so everyone had their different processes. So that's why there's also not one standard way for venture. Some of the larger firms do have like hiring teams that work on it. But for emerging VCs with teams of three, it's very different and personality driven. So before COVID, a lot of people would just ask in their network circles, hey, do you know anyone who'd want to join my fund? And maybe they would have 10 applicants. Now that it's online, you're going to see up to 1,000 applicants for roles.
And, in terms of that, right? Did any like single VC say that someone was hired because of code application?
Cold application. So, well, technically, when I worked at New Stack Ventures, that was a cold application. I didn't have a referral. Half of my career was referral based, half was not. So I'm pretty proud of that. They had a lot of rounds, I will say, that were speeding back to back. But some people, I would say externally now, I feel like if you don't have a referral, but if you have a large following where people watch your content, that's a way that you can get in, I would say cold. But then people do at the end of the rounds still have your reference list. So there's always that little level. But without like truly cold, if you build a following online, that's been the way that I think I've seen more people get really acknowledged at VC funds.
Yeah, it's like establishing that credibility beforehand. So in terms of that, right? Like what does the rounds actually look like? Is it one round? Is it two rounds? What did it look like at that time?
Absolutely. So every fund also does it very differently that I learned in my thesis. So I can speak for New Stack. They don't run their fellowship anymore. I was really fortunate to be in it during their first year of launching it, but I think I probably had first round was a Google Doc to let them know who you are, talk about a startup in the ecosystem that really excited you, or like also talk about like a big company. Like I remember I talked about Snowflake. Then there was a video round, so you did have to like make like a 1 minute video introducing yourself. Highly recommend doing those. A lot of people skip away, but I feel like that's like one of the reasons I got it was because I did the video. Then there was the meeting the team round, and then there might have been one other round. So I would say maybe 3 to 4 rounds. But they really, though, yeah, there was more of like to get to know about like your investment thesis type of situation. So when I brought up Snowflake, I remember I had to rebring that in a different round and like really get grilled on like the technical side of some investments and like walk me through why you thought you're thinking about this, this, and this. So that was like something. And then the rounds happened within 24 hours. So like you'd do it and then you'd learn within 24 hours if you made it to like the next round. But it was just like all back to back. So you really had to be on your email. I would say be on your email if you're in those rounds. But then on the fun to fun side, that was like a 6 month long from the day I met the team to like when I got that commitment. That was 6 months of interviewing.
And talk more about that as well.
So it was about like around a month. And so it was a lot of like who I am as a person. So I met different members of the team. And then there were, yeah, all questions about just running through my background in venture and like what I've done because it was really untraditional to even get exposure at 16. No one did that. Now it's very different. But back then, like no one had that experience. So it was a lot of deep conversations and learning opportunities. So there was like around a month of that, just meeting everyone on the team.
Yeah. And, back then it's basically the same equivalent as like a 16-year-old applying to Y Combinator. And that's
Yeah,
how crazy it is.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I know at Bryant, right? You were also the founder of MEL Designs and Prototypes.
hmm
Could you talk more about that program that you kind of started?
Absolutely. Which is so funny you bring that up because I found some old deck work that I did on that. But basically, I was building logos for startups. And then I was also doing marketing materials. So one of the coolest clients that I was working with was a woman. She's based in Boston at the time, but she was doing like a yoga retreat in Ireland and needed all these marketing materials done, like in Irish themed and stuff like that. So I was helping her build that retreat. But besides that, it's been these small logos. And I started out because at Bryant University, we had this, as freshmen, you had to go through an entrepreneurship program. So you needed a logo for this class. So I think I charged like $5 for a logo that I built. But you know what? I made it. I made some small change with MEL designs. But yeah, that was my first entrepreneurial experience of just doing it on my own.
Yeah. And that's what makes an entrepreneur is that you truly are someone who can not only like think of new ideas and actually act upon it, but like also make some, decent revenue, right? At university. So, as someone who went to Bryant University and you were part of the Bryant Ventures accelerators, what actually makes up a great accelerator? Does it really just look like, a bunch of people gathered in one room, just kind of working every single day at like 7 p.m.? Does it mean like doing some pitch competitions? Like, what does it actually mean to be an accelerator that actually drives results?
So, from the student side and even general, if you build an environment that the companies under you can gain new customers and build revenue, that is like the golden idea. So, whether that's bringing in different industry experts to come speak, I'm a huge fan of events. They're called reverse pitch days, where VCs get up on stage, pitch their firm to founders. And so then founders would know, okay, this is exactly what this VC firm is looking for. I'm that person, and then go meet that way. But it's really a really strong networking side. I think what accelerators do great is you meet a lot of people who are in the same boat. So it's called Social Enterprise Greenhouse. They run an accelerator based in Providence, Rhode Island, meeting a group of other founders who were in my same boat where we could just talk about our problems and like in real life, like not just like online or what you read online. You're like, right now, this day, this is what happened to me. How do I get through it? And you get all these like little voices around you and it's like great and they get it. And then we're all cheering for each other. So like when you win, the whole group wins. And so it's that like collaboration and community that really comes together with accelerators that if you decide to go and you can totally build without one, but you don't get that sense of community that you would if you go through an accelerator.
And I'm curious for a university accelerator, right? Is there enough student founders in the same type of niche for them to feel that sense of camaraderie? Or is that actually not necessary to be in the same niche, just the same stage process?
I would recommend you don't need to have in the same like niche. I would say at Bryant Ventures across the years, we've seen people build like successful like custom fishing rods, companies that still do it. There's a current student, he runs a company and basically They make coffee. Another one makes really healthy sunflower seeds that are like so good. So like people are in all these different and then we had like a music platform that got exited. So we had all these different ideas, but I think you aim for quality over quantity. Like if you just have 10 students who are just so driven with their idea, like that's really all you need. You don't need to have like hundreds of students. And I wouldn't recommend it because entrepreneurship is not for everyone. I will say that it is such a different journey and career path if you do decide. It's so rewarding, but only certain perspectives and personalities can really handle the stress because the stress of a founder is very different from other types of jobs on the market. So as long as you have like even you could even go down as like a group of 5 and start from there. But as long as you have school support, what's really incredible that I've started to see is a lot of colleges have their own VC funds that students can invest out of. So that's been really exciting to see because that gives them more VC experience pretty early on. And then they're investing in their alumni and students.
Yeah, and our university also has that. So in terms of, I know you mentioned like through all of the stress that founders have, right? Creating that environment that works for them and at the same time making a way for them to get revenue. Is that through the networking from alumni or is it through just like giving them guides of how to network?
It can be both. You can sometimes, I've seen some students work in a generalized area. So, for example, if you were, I'll go to like the food, if you're in the food space and you're really excited about doing something there and you meet an alumni who works for like a very large food company, or maybe they started something within the food space, like they would be able to help you with those questions of like the industry specific stuff or link you to maybe suppliers or customers along that way. So you kind of they'll give you general networking tips I've gotten personally across the board. But then there are those few people that will give you industry specific and would know your customer. And then those relationships, those are really nice.
Yeah, and you mentioned that 70K was invested during your time there. So what did the investment process actually look like? Was it you guys kind of just like worked with the founders and just like knew them as a person for like 2 months and then you guys went through IC process for like 2 more months and that investment happens?
So for that, it was 750K externally was outside of us. So we basically supported, okay, if you have materials, we'll review them. You can pitch to us. We'll do more of like the operational work. And then through different university relationships, that's when angels kind of came in. They had long-term relationships with the founders. Sometimes it was like 1 or 2 years. So that was externally invested. My university, we had an investment fund, but that was just for stock market work. So I also had some ability to invest out of that fund, but very different types of finance. Yeah, being on the equity portfolio manager as a student and then doing the venture investing, very different risk structures.
And how did you balance all of that with school life?
Because I got early exposure to venture, I knew one way, shape, or form I wanted to stay in the industry. I had the stats against me of like, could I even break in? Because no one in my family was in the industry. No one really knew what PE was, private equity. You know, my grandparents, I love them. PE for them was physical education. You know, they're like, oh yeah, that's what it. I'm like, no, it's actually finance, and this is what it is. So it was a very different background. So I was just so focused, laser focused on finding these opportunities online. So I didn't have a balanced life at all. It was pretty stressful, actually. I went through a lot of fund rejections. And so you get to like your 100th fund rejection, you're like, wow, I'm still staying in this industry. I don't care how, but like I will continue onwards. So I'm the worst person to ask about balance because I really prioritize my career over time. And it is stressful when you have a tight deadline of deal work. And so you're like, I need to find like 3 deals by Friday. And maybe you're at 2, you're like, where am I going to find the other remaining ones? So I put stress on myself during that time period. But I think there are ways that you can balance it out. It depends on how active you want to be or the different types of fellowships you want in venture. Some are more educational, some are more hands on. So I worked on a hands on one, actually being out there building sourcing pipeline, but I know some VCs like it's just 1 month, jump on Zoom, here's an educational session. So it depends on like what you're really looking for and what time you have. Like, I would say the athletes, like how they balance athletics and schooling, I have no idea. But if I was an athlete, definitely couldn't have done it. But I use that time to really build my schedule because I knew I wanted to break in the industry. I knew I had to stand out in a different way, and I knew I had to go the extra mile that people weren't willing to go. And I think it did pay off. Well, your career is so long, so but it paid off in the way of, like, I learned knowledge from an apprenticeship model that didn't exist at that time, and so I'm really proud of the effort that I put in to get to where I was.
And for you, right, that was the true balance. Just like for athletes, that is the balance. Even though from the outside, you see like they have all these hours that they're putting in. It's because,
Mhm.
maybe for you, it was career driven, right? And then for them, it was just like athletics driven. So then they can make it to the NBA and NFL and all of that type of stuff because they had this goal and they stuck to this goal. And this is what balance is. And balance for everyone listening, like I honestly don't really hear of anyone, any adult, right, with any true balance, unless like you're retired, right? It's because there's no really, I guess, like such thing as balance. What you do and what you want to do, that goal, when you are achieving it, when you are doing the best you can, like Melissa, that is a true balance. So I know there's also other opportunities, right? You went to the Future VC Masterclass program. Talk a little bit about that.
So that was during COVID. So it was run by leading UK VCs. And so it was basically pre-COVID, the program was structured differently. It was you were placed with funds in the UK after the program, and it was fully in person. But I was part of like their remote group. And I loved it. So they actually opened up to more people. I wanna say like 200 people were in the group, but we were all throughout the world. And so, like, that was the first time I met a VC based in, like, Australia or, like, all these different regions. And so and to also get a perspective of VC from outside the US, which is I would argue is one of the most capitalistic countries out there, and I'm in VC, so I it's okay to say that. But to get the EU and the UK opinion on it, I thought was phenomenal just because they invest differently. And so I'm still plugged into a lot of the people that were in the program went on to be angels, VCs, operators, founders. So I think that they did a really good job of like breaking down due diligence and different types of everything you need to know about venture. They broke down into that class. But I think the network effect from that program was by far the greatest that I had.
I'm curious. So, on your thoughts on the US versus maybe the UK or Europe, like how is venture capital different?
The EU's newer markets, so they're getting really scrappy and getting creative. I think in terms of deals, the US deals are larger just by far. I wanna say there was a private equity manager I met. He said something interesting, but basically all the tech companies that we use on a daily basis are from the US. So if you think of Microsoft, Google, EU hasn't had that yet. So when EU has that, I think that will also put them on the map from a greater perspective. But there are a lot of, I would say the EU looks at us as an example for it. But in terms of deal flow, activity, and dollars, it's still very much in the US, but there are opportunities out in that region.
And what trends in venture capital are you most excited about right now?
I love physical AI. Like, I started to learn a little bit more about it. I don't think it's had its full moment yet. So this is anything like in the robotics section. And so I'm really excited about that. I think in terms of like more of a macro trend, solo GPs really excite me. We're seeing a lot of that, or I'm seeing a lot of that at the events that I'm running to. These are like vintages from 2025 or 2026. And I think that they have a very diverse investment thesis, some of them that I meet. So I'm really excited to see where they kind of play. But those are kind of the two ones. Ocean tech too. I haven't had previous exposure to it, but I'm starting to learn more about it, and that's been really exciting as well. The ocean's so big, and we can learn so much from it. So
I know you talked a bit about how to break into VC. For our viewers who really needs an actionable plan to implement right away, what would be your recommended 6-month plan to break in VC and say month one, two, three, four, five?
absolutely. So for like month 1 and 2, I would actually recommend people to become a sponge. So absorb anything online, learn what you like about the industry, what you don't like about the industry, build your own investment thesis and then really hash that out. And so with month 3 to 4, that's when I would recommend you start reaching out to managers. Like once you know if healthcare is your thing or if robotics is your thing, or if you're like, you know what, fintech is not my thing, understanding what managers are specifically in those ecosystems, that's when I think you will have an understanding of like what a deeper conversation in these industries. And so when you do reach out, it's going to be a little bit more thoughtful and you'll be able to have that. And so across the board, you should also be starting to go to events. You can start earlier. I always say it's never too early to show up. So throughout the 6 months, like definitely go to events. But yeah, month 2 to 3, start reaching out. At that point, you will have more of an understanding of what your investment thesis is. And then you're able to kind of have those conversations and then maybe start finding VC fellowships that might work for you. Another way you can start asking, I would say month 4 and 5, if you found a manager that you really appreciate and you really love, like you could ask them like, hey, do you mind if I like shadow you or be a fellow or just like an apprenticeship program. So these aren't things that weren't really structured, but if you add value and you're able to source for them, start writing online what you like and what you're seeing in the market, start building your brand early. Boston is really incredible for these two organizations I will shout out. One is Girls into VC. If you've ever heard of the organization, yeah, they started at Harvard and basically for any woman who wants to be in venture or even touch venture, work for a founder, the startup side, they really get you plugged in. And so they started out as like one group and now they're all across nationwide. They have like Stanford, like groups, like every college you can think of. The other one, she started early, Megan Loyce. She started NZVCs. So she built like a Slack channel with like anyone who's interested in, I think it's over 20,000 members. So like learning from them how to get creatively plugged into the industry is something that you can do across it. And fellowships, I think they take a lot. So by month 6, if you don't have a fellowship, it's okay. Just keep going. It's really a long-term game.
Yeah, and Slack communities are actually a real thing. So,
Yeah.
for us Prime VCs actually listening to this, like literally just search it up and you can find lots of stuff. So yeah, now for a few rapid fire questions to wrap up. A few words or one sentence. Ready? If you could invest in any startup from the past, which one would it be?
Ooh, can I change this to which fund from the past? Okay, it's called Monarch Collective. It's their investment thesis is that they invest in female sports. So anything, they're one of like the first people to have a fund that invests in that space. And so they started in 2022 or 2023. But yeah, they're one from the past that I would love to invest.
You've been to Boston, Chicago, Rhode Island. What place have you not traveled to yet, but want to?
Ooh, Antarctica. I'm actually a big global traveler too. Anyone who personally knows me knows that. But yeah, that's one I haven't been to and really want to.
Why Antarctica?
This kind of goes into like the ocean of like passion. Like you can just see whales, penguins just living their best life out in the open. And so you have to make it through Drake Passage. So I have to prep myself for that. But just it's a unique experience that's only you can only see it in Antarctica.
Well, I actually saw penguins in China,
What region?
like in the aquariums. So I think like
Oh,
literally in almost every other city you can find like penguins and
well, that's
snow
awesome.
fox, snow Arctic fox.
Oh,
I'll
those
show
look
you a
great.
picture afterwards. But yeah,
Okay.
what is a fun fact about you most people don't know?
I studied martial arts, so I'm 2 belts away from black belt. Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Like if I'm going anywhere dangerous, I'm taking you with me.
Oh my god.
Okay, is there any thoughts you want to finish or we did not get to cover on this pod that you would like to talk about?
Great question. One advice that I got was if you wanna be a VC, actually go be a founder first, and if you wanna be a founder, go be a VC, because you're gonna learn what the other side of the table is looking for, and so you're able to actually complete a picture if you do it kinda reverse.
That was amazing, Melissa. For anyone listening who wants to learn more about you, what's the best place to reach you?
So I have accounts across different social medias. It's called the Startup Encyclopedia. So that's on Instagram. I am on TikTok. for the first time ever, which has been good. And then also my LinkedIn. So Melissa K. Hernandez is a good place.
I know there's a lot of perhaps emerging managers listening to this as well who just started their fund one. What exactly are the profile of people that you are looking to meet? Is it the fund ones? Is it the fund twos? Like what exactly is it?
So fund ones. So me myself, I'm generalist, but I like to work with specialist VCs. So if you have some type of specialty that you want to hash out, and I've been also helping with like fund deck creation or being that final person before you send it to an LP. So I've been helping along that. But in terms of research, I leave it up to the emerging VC. What excites you? What are you seeing in the market? And like what would you want to be known for long term as like a VC fund?
Thank you again. And thanks to everyone who's listening. Comment a question you want to hear from Melissa. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to press the subscribe button, like, and share it with someone who's interested in getting in the venture. We'll see you next time on Break into VC.